From words of blood, day had nearly broken on Empyrean 9. Commander Athelanus glanced above him at the stars fading against the light of the planet's sun. He could still just see the silver dagger hanging in orbit, the renegade ship that was waiting to drop down onto the lone spaceport and rescue the heathen horde that was stranded here. He had 30 Marines. 30 Marines to halt an army that never gave up, never felt pain, who existed only to draw blood from the holy imperium of man. But Athelanus knew he must succeed. This temple on the outskirts of the planet's lone abandoned city dated back from the Great Crusade, when the people of the Imperium spontaneously elevated the emperor to godhood before his worship was taken over by the bureaucrats of the ecclesiarchy. And it was by the faith that had built this temple that he swore no heretic would leave this planet alive. Sergeant Valerian scrambled over the ruined outer wall of the temple, keeping low to avoid detection. "Commander, they are sighted. They have left their ship. Damage? They came down shallow. Most of them survived. Numbers?" Valerian paused, a frown passing over his old, gnarled features. "It is better that you see for yourself, Commander." The Devastator sergeant handed Athelanus the scope from the squad's Lascanon. Athelanus made his way to the temple perimeter, from where the great smoking hulk of the crashed renegade craft could be seen, scarred and pitted against the gray, pre-dawn sky. He looked through the scope and saw the enemy for the first time. He counted them automatically, one batch stripping the dead, another, cavalry, dragging stubborn horses from the ship's hold, and a third group, the largest, surrounding the leader. They were cultists, and far gone. Most of them shirtless and wearing the jackets of their uniforms tied around their waists. Barefoot, their skins scarred and painted with blood, armed with whatever they had salvaged. Lasguns, knives, shards of twisted metal, a couple of heavy weapons on carriages pulled by the riders' horses. Every cultist had that same wide-eyed look, the look of rage mixed with desperation and unacknowledged fear, the emotions of treachery waiting to boil over at any second. Athelanus added up their numbers, 6,000, give or take, and the leader. If proof was needed that this was the work of the blood god, he was it. Tall, not massively muscular, but wiry and powerful, almost glowing with pent-up energy. Dressed only in blood-stained cloth wrapped around his waist, black straggly hair, a violent, unshaven face, his skin covered in scars and branded with heathen symbols. One arm was gone, replaced with a pair of hydraulic industrial shears so big the tips reached the ground. The blades were pitted and worn, but even in the weak light, the savagely sharp edge shone silver. He was talking animatedly to the heretics who surrounded him, his eyes flashing, his words so charged and evil that even though he was out of earshot, Athelanus could feel their power. "Valerian? Commander? Take note, we have found the Gathalamor 24th. The Manskinner? But he's a lot more than a rumor, Valerian. He's real, and he's here. He has the 4,000 from Gathalamor and more. Probably the Gurian mutineers, and some cavalry." Athelanus handed back the scope. "Prepare a defensive position. The Manskinner will know we are here. He will attack with the sun." As Valerian gave instruction to the dug-in Devastators, and the tactical and assault squads checked their weapons again for the fight that was to come, Athelanus ran over the rumors and official denials. That the famously pious planet of Gathalamor should supply the renegades for the Manskinner's army was too much for the ecclesiarchy to admit. They had insisted the Manskinner was a rumor dreamed up by their enemies in the administratum. Athelanus' loyalty lay with Terra, not the ecclesiarchy, but he, for one, would be happy to do them a favor and quell this rumor for good. And what rumors? They said the Manskinner was nothing more than a criminal. He was being transported from a hive world, some said Necromunda, others Lastrati, when he broke out somehow. A bulkhead used to seal the brig had taken his arm off during the attempt, but the massive shock and blood loss had not killed him. He survived and fought on, and the last entries in the log of the drifting, burnt-out prison ship recorded how the plasma reactor was being tampered with and was about to go critical. The charred bodies of all those on board were recovered, save one. It was on Gathalamor that the Manskinner turned up next and earned his name. Those officers in the regiment he infiltrated who opposed him were butchered in the night and their flayed skins run up the barracks' flagpoles. Within 3 days of his arrival, it was said, several thousand of the planet's most trusted guardsmen had disappeared, taking a troop transport ship from orbit as they did so, leaving a blood-soaked altar of skulls in the center of their parade ground as if to mock those who stayed behind. These were the tales that seemed to have substance. Others were just anecdotes and stories about how the Manskinner could turn men to chaos with his words alone, about the strange omens that accompanied him, and the abnormalities in the Astronomicon which had confounded the spacecraft attempting to pursue his army. Athelanus had been a commander for a long time and a space marine for longer. He had learned that when cautious men believe nothing they have not seen, a true leader can sift truth from lies. And there was a truth here, of the sheer monstrosity of the Manskinner, a force that corrupted the staunchest of men with horrifying ease. From foes such as him, the Imperium had the most to fear, for it was built on the souls of its subjects, those same souls that the Manskinner was making his own. Brothers, sons of blood, this day we face the final enemy. Some amongst you may believe the blood god has seen fit to test us once more before we can truly worship him with the sacrifice of 1,000,000 Macharian lives. The words of blood cut right into their minds, driving them to further heights of bloodlust. The Manskinner had never felt more grateful for the gift of the words. No army, no marine could stand before men who knew nothing but the joy of carnage. But the truth, sons of blood, is that such have we pleased him that he has given us yet more skulls to take. And what skulls? The Marines, the scum of humanity, the Imperium's blind machines, are here to die in his name and prove his power to the weak. The Manskinner raised his remaining arm high, and the crowd around him cheered madly, screaming their insane joy at the battle to come. Many had died in the crash, and still more were wounded or weak. Their very bloodlust would kill them. Still, they were many. They would charge across the planet's lone city and take the spaceport, and their brothers in orbit would carry them the rest of their journey to Macaria, and on that world of 30 billion souls, his army would die in an orgy of carnage in the name of the blood god. It was impossible to imagine the numbers that would die, the mindless hordes of the weak, put to the sword before the last cultist died. Such would be the pleasure of the blood god, that he, the Manskinner, would become his chosen, an immortal champion, murdering the very stars in his name. Brothers, he called again over the din, tend to your arms. The imperial filth will die at the rising of the sun. The cultists scattered to prepare themselves, to load guns and sharpen blades, scar themselves, and contemplate the glorious acts of murder to come. Rakoba, once a corporal, now commanding the 4,000 Gathalamor rebels, bellowed orders and cracked heads. Korea, who had joined the Manskinner with over 2,000 men from the Planetary Defense Force on Gurion, was rather more subtle, making sure his men could see his finger on the trigger of his dueling laspistol at all times. "Dies!" yelled the Manskinner. The rider galloped up on his jet-black horse. The beast's nostrils were flecked with foaming blood, and its eyes bulged, but even this animal was infected by the power of the words of blood. Des himself, young and breathlessly eager, sat bolt upright, cavalry sword raised in salute, still wearing his tattered officer's uniform. "Sir, my Lord Manskinner, Des, to you goes the honor of first blood. You and your men will be the first to hit the Marines' position. Hit hard. If you can take some alive, do so. They will provide sport for the rest. If not, let nothing survive." Even Des smiled at this. "Thank you, my lord. This is a glorious day for Colcha. Everyone on Colcha wants you dead, Dis. This is a glorious day for the blood god." "Sir, yes, sir." Dis galloped off, infused with that strange joy that only the blood god could give a man in the moments before battle. The Manskinner could taste his victory on the air. The dry ground of Empyrean Eing would run red before the day was out. The first rays of the sun broke around the hulk of the cultist's spacecraft. Dies's horsemen, 300 strong, spurred their mounts into motion as one and thundered across the plain towards the broken obsidian shell of the temple. Many of the foot troops followed them, waving their salvaged weapons and screaming with bloodlust, hoping that when they reached the temple, there would be some Marines left alive for them. Even as the first lasgun shots cut through the air, The Manskinner could feel the blood god smiling down upon him from his throne of skulls in the warp. Blood keened a familiar voice in his head. Blood for the blood god.